On this episode of Edge of the Web.
And when we can bring our mistakes out in the open, we are going to be a real team. When we have to hide our mistakes for fear of being canceled, we have no chance of being a real team. We have no chance of having a real relationship. So if people want to have real relationships and be on teams that are actually teams, we have to be charitable and we have to be gracious.
Your weekly digital marketing trends with industry trend-setting guests. You're listening and watching Edge of the Web. Winners of Best Podcast from the Content Marketing Institute for 2017. Hear and see more at edgeofthewebradio.com. Now, here's your host, Aaron Sparks.
All right, so this is Edge of the Web Radio, episode 364. I'm your host, Aaron Sparks of Site Strategics. Every week we bring you amazing guests to chat with from around the planet, talking about digital marketing news, digital marketing tactics, as well as cultural things in the digital marketing and remote working space. We unpack a key marketing topic almost every show, and we're delivering it to our different audiences. If you are part of a digital marketing agency, this show's for you. If you're a freelancer out there, or if you're part of the company's marketing team, we certainly are delivering content that you can use tactically to be able to increase your digital bottom line. So stay tuned and also dive into the other shows. We've been doing this for 9 years, and the cool thing is everything that we've talked about is evergreen. We don't go after fad things or black hat things that get dismissed or penalized. We're constantly talking about good quality content, good quality tactics that stand the test of time, except for Rel Author. Rel Author disappeared, and we're very sad about that, as well as Google+. Rest in peace. But anyway, check out all the recent shows over at edgeofthewebradio.com. That's edgeofthewebradio.com. So if you're new to the show, we'll tell you real quick what we do with our content. We record and adjust with our guest schedules to be able to record about an hour-long show, and we'll actually light up the cameras like you see, as well as lay down audios, and we'll actually repurpose this to be able to get into all the channels of the new media audience. So quick videos, news videos, as well as two podcasts for each show, the news that is linked to this podcast, as well as the full interview. And then we'll actually repurpose and then take this to content, so searchable content, transcripts, as well as blog articles about what we've talked about, as well as pushing it into social. So wherever you are on your kind of digital consumer profile, we're trying to bring content to you where you are. You can listen to us on our podcast on all the different aggregators: iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spreaker, iHeartMedia, iHeartRadio, Player FM, Spotify, TuneIn. And remember, we're doing 2 podcasts a week. So that news podcast is right around 12 to 13 minutes unless I get really, really long-winded. And we know how I go, right? So check that out, because we're always bringing relevant news articles of that week, if we can help be as topical as possible. And the news and the interview is usually around 45 minutes or so of some great in-depth conversation with our guests. You can check out everything over at edgeofthewebradio.com, the show, the news, and the transcripts, and much more. We're brought to you by Site Strategics, the title sponsor of the show. Our company, our parent company, and we're pioneers in the agile digital marketing technique. Our core specialties are SEO, search engine marketing, social media marketing, website development, conversion optimization, to be able to squeeze better and better leads out of your online visibility. So if you're interested in what we can do for you, give us a call at 877-SEO for web or 877-336-4932. There's the commercial. And I'm going to introduce the guy on the stick. That's Jacob.
Hello.
Hello, Jacob. How you doing, sir?
I'm over here updating my Google Plus page.
Well, have you heard, what was the other Google platform that we just talked about here a couple stories ago? The new image-oriented Google platform. What was it called? Squeeze or Lean or...
I cannot think of it to save my life right now.
Well, it really hasn't shown up anywhere
else.
No,
it hasn't. Yeah, we have to go back and find it. It's
Glean.
one of our previous news episodes.
I'm
but
glad
I've edited it and moved on since then.
Yeah, my retention's not there. But evidently, it's not really getting that traction.
I haven't heard of it since then.
No. You know what we are getting traction on is our guest lineup. So on the 10th of August, we have Shama Hyder. We're certainly talking to Max Yoder here. Let's see here. Julie Baccanini is going to be on the show, as well as John Mueller going to be showing up on the 31st of August. We're also going to have Shay Rowbottom back for another round. She is an incredible guest, and boy, piped full of energy. And if you want to learn about how to cultivate a online presence inside of LinkedIn, she is the one to talk to. So if you're interested in being part of the show, or you can recommend a guest to us, simply email info@edgeofthewebradio.com. Don't forget to set the reminders whenever we light up the YouTube channel with our new videos as well. So that's the show housekeeping. Now let's deep dive with this week's featured guest.
Now it's time for Edge of the Web featured interview with Max Yoder, CEO of Lessingly.
All right. Max Yoder is the CEO and co-founder of Lessingly, the online training software that helps teams learn, practice, and do better work. They have a great online training tool, an LMS system, a learning management system. Max, how are you doing?
Aaron, it's good to be here. I want to do this because this is my third time on the show, and I am happy about that. You bring a tremendous amount of energy, and I always vibe off of that. So thanks again for having me.
We miss you right here. We've always had a great time in the studio, and we certainly would love to see you again. But, I mean, during this period of time, we're certainly kind of locking it down here, and you actually have a baby on the way. So we want to make sure that you're protected as well. So congrats on that.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, extra cautious with the baby on the way. Yep. Wife's doing well. And thank you. It'll be my first child. So you have 4. Whatever you can teach me, whatever Jacob can teach me, I'm open to it.
Oh my gosh. Well, I probably have to write down a few things, but always obey your wife.
Okay.
When it comes down to the kids, because
she's got great sense. I can do that. I really respect her. I respect the way she lives and thinks. So I don't think that'll be tough for me.
Very good. I think we could probably do an entire show on what to avoid being a dad of 4, right?
I feel like that'd just be a story of what I've done.
Yeah, well, it's best we can do, right? Just tell our own experience.
That's right. So regarding experiences, thank you for joining us and coming around and talking about Lessingly. Can you give us a brief history of how you've come to be the CEO of Lessingly and what Lessingly is striving to do?
Yeah, I work as the CEO and have for 8 years, co-founded the business with 3 of my friends. Mm-hmm. And one of those friends, Eric Tobias, said, hey, I've started 3 businesses and I've never invested in training software. And that was enough encouragement for us to go, well, let's check that out. Because I was coming off of a failed business called Quipple. Quipple was polling and surveying software. Mm-hmm. And I was coming off of that company. Didn't go very well. I was excited to try something new. The training space and the learning space were exciting. And what we learned was a lot of people don't purchase learning management systems or training software because it seems expensive, mm-hmm. seems hard to use, and they don't know what value they're going to get. So what we do is we focus specifically on sales teams and customer service teams because we can provide a process for those teams to get value out of our software.
Sure.
Salespeople, customer service people, if you're buying something or you've just bought something and you need help with it, those are the people who we want to train. The people you're buying from or the people you're going to call after you buy something. And now we have 1,000 customers. We just passed 1,000 customers this year, which is a big move for us. And, if you fast forward from day 1 to year 8, it's been really fun. We have 180 teammates now. 1,000. Wow. Yeah, I know. 1,000 customers, and we've learned a lot about what makes training work. And a big part of it's practicing. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. A lot of times, training is kind of relegated to information sharing, where hey, you read this, Aaron, and then you're trained. But that puts knowledge up here. It doesn't put it in your heart and your soul. And right. we want to get things to your heart and your soul because that's where they influence your behavior. So a big part of our software is helping you practice what you've just learned. So once you've read something, like maybe you've read how to engage with a customer when they're requesting to return something, or maybe they're requesting to add something to their offerings. Maybe they're maybe if you're a phone company, we work with a lot of big phone companies, mm-hmm. And you have a customer calling in and they're saying, hey, I want to actually add a line. And I've just learned how to add the line by reading and got that context. Well, now I can hop into a sandbox and actually click through the workflow to say, here's what it will look like to set up a new line in a safe space. And then I can share that with my teammates or my manager to say, how did I do? And that kind of practice of I can safely try something as many times as I want to build the muscle,
right,
is huge. And a lot of companies, they force you to practice in front of the customer as opposed to before you reach the customer. And that is, you can get by doing that, but there's what we believe to be a better way.
But that's not a learning environment. That's a pressured environment. And,
yeah, it is.
You're in front of God and everybody. And the fact of the matter is that you hit it on the head. Muscle memory. I mean, literally getting that repetition. You got to do it in a safe place where the pressure's off, and then you can actually retain it a good deal better. Yeah.
Amen. It's actually the art of playing. Oh. Think about being a child. You remember being a child. You have children. They play without pressure, right? Yep. They pick up something and they learn how to do it by just trying and saying, "What does this do?" And they throw it around and they open it up, and they don't feel pressure to do it well. And that playing mentality is very important in practicing. If we can bring a playful mentality of, "I'm going to try this." And I am going to be open to the fact that I don't know how to do it, but that's a part of learning. And I'm going to give it as many goes as I want till I feel comfortable with it. That's what's required to practice. Absolutely. And safe environment that is playful is a big part of that.
Actually, my wife would actually consider me the fifth child. So I resemble that remark. All right. So
yeah, I hear you.
So the long and short of it here is there's a lot to actually, not a lot, but there's a particular discipline that you need to execute in true learning and retention. And I can appreciate that you're focused on sales and customer service as a core focus, because if you are trying to serve all of the different needs from a training space, right, you could get yourself in your platform into a heck of a lot of different areas that were maybe a good deal more academic than kind of transactional in nature. So you actually, with your type of platform, you can also tie in a direct ROI based on the sales training that you're doing and how that actually affects your bottom line, right?
Right. And that's been very helpful for us in the COVID era, right? We need to be able to show our value. A lot of training software is focused on compliance, and there's value in compliance, but there's a lot of ways to achieve compliance. And what we want to do is help people build behaviors that drive revenue, that save money for the company. And if we can do that, we become very, very valuable to an organization. And so that's why we focus where we focus is we like working with sales teams we have fun with them. They renew. And there's a lot of them, and same with customer service teams. So it's been a really healthy focus. And when I speak to people starting businesses, one of the hardest things to do is focus, because it seems like the more customers that are possibly out there, the better I'll do. But really winnowing down the pool of people that we could sell to, we've really winnowed it down to sales and customer service. That's not as many as we could have, right? To your point, we could sell the training software to anybody. But that focus has helped us really dial in our product, get really good at what we do, have a reputation for that. Those are all really good things. And I'm sure there's more advantages than I just mentioned.
Let me ask you this about your focus on sales training. Have you adopted certain type of training behaviors for those type of salespeople? Because therein lies a particular unique behavior trait or a behavior or a particular type of personality. Predominantly, I'm not trying to stereotype all salespeople, but they are a bit aggressive and they have their own learned process, and they do get a little bit challenging adopting better techniques or new techniques. So have you actually adjusted how you train towards to kind of penetrate some of those more stubborn mentalities?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's a great question because if you're a stubborn salesperson, quote unquote stubborn salesperson, somebody who kind of wants to do what they've been doing and doesn't want to take training.
Yep.
Well, let's look at the scoreboard, because the scoreboard is always available in the sales world. If you're up there performing and you're not kind of toxic to your team dynamic, I don't see any reason why you need to go through the training. We want to focus the training on the folks who may be in that middle batch where they have some strong quarters, they have some softer quarters, and they could use some more robust training and some more going through the motions of building the muscles to get into that top quartile. I always recommend, if you got folks in the top quartile and they don't want to take the training, that's okay, right? If they're continuing to perform and they're not culturally toxic, hey, all day long. But what about that other group, that 25 to 75% performance group? Not the bottom quartile, which is where people tend to go. They're like, well, this is going to help my bottom quartile. There might not be anything to help that bottom quartile. Who knows? We should give it a try, but they just might be in the wrong job. This might just be the wrong fit. But what about that middle group who has success and then doesn't? How do we bring more of them to the top quartile or closer to it? That's where I'd focus my training on, is how do we take the people who right now maybe feel sink or swim because they're figuring that out as they go, and how do we bring more structure to them so that more of them can swim and fewer of them sink?
Very good. Very good. Well, that's Lessonly, and that's your mission from a development and a product service offering. I want to shift gears here and let's talk about what COVID has done for training scenarios when everybody's shut in. And we talked about in our news the video consumption is such a higher degree right now than ever before. How has Lessonly been able to help during this particular period of time? Because your sales still have to go on, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, we've become mission critical for organizations in ways that, we're it's just very different than the pre-COVID world. Because in the pre-COVID world, we could bring people into a conference room if we needed to.
Sure.
But in the post-COVID world, or the current world, we need to still communicate, but we can't bring everybody together. So on-demand training, like what we create, is hugely valuable. And when somebody goes through our practice scenarios that we offer for sales teams or customer service teams, let's say let's say there's a new process we're rolling out or a new approach, and a salesperson or customer service person just nails it in their practice scenario. Being able to take that and share that with the broader team and say, here's what it looks like to do this well,
right?
It's something that you might have been able to do in the office by just watching. Just observing somebody, but now that observation has gone out the window.
Oh, now you're a box. Now you're just a screen. You don't have those peripherals. You don't have that body language. Sorry, keep on going.
No, you nailed it, man. You nailed it. So, the more people practice, the more examples we get of what it looks like to do something well, and that's really how we help people develop. Is we show them a model for something, and in the same way that you can be funny in all sorts of ways, right? We don't want to be so prescriptive that we say you have to do it just like that. You're an individual, Aaron. So if you and I are both selling the same thing, us doing it just like one another isn't the point, because we need to be genuine to who we are if we're going to connect in the sales process with the buyer.
Absolutely.
But we can watch a model and take some cues for, in the comedy example, what makes something funny? Well, what makes something funny in comedy is something being incongruous to your expectations, right? So if I can watch the model and get to that root value and say, okay, well, I see an example of funny here, and now I can make my own version of funny. Right. That's a beautiful thing. So that's what we try to do, is not make people robotic, but to show them examples of something going well so they can dig in and go, what makes that go well? And how do I apply that in my own genuine way?
Absolutely. And we've all been in those scenarios where there's a forced joke from somebody who did not know how to deliver it, and it just brings everything to a screaming halt.
Yeah.
Very awkward moments there. But on top of that, using video, and thank God we have the platforms that we do with Zoom and Microsoft Teams and all of these different relatively stable platforms. We wouldn't have been able to go through what we're going through right now 5 years ago. But the video side of things and sales over video give a unique scenario of recording that video and playing it back, right?
Sure. Yeah, we can. I mean, let me make sure I'm following you. Are you saying like, hey, we could go through a sales call and I could record the whole thing so that my prospective customer could watch it later, make sure they understood something? Is that what you mean?
No, I'm actually as a mirror, actually reflecting back. So recording that and be able to have the salesperson see and even dissect that. How did we do? I mean, I honestly, we actually lost a bid on a project several weeks ago, and I had the recording, and I could actually go through and see when it kind of went sour, when there was a particular position change of the customer, Yeah. So having that type of retrospective now more than any time before. Are you seeing customers use that particular process to help hone their sales skills?
Yeah, Chorus, Gong, those are two softwares that are specifically built to record conversations and play them back. And so they were doing that prior to COVID, and they're doing it now. And it's like I said, you can't just shadow people now.
Sure.
So what we're seeing in our sales team is if somebody has a really good call and they have a Chorus recording to it, they can also share that and say like, hey, here's something that went really well. I explained it this way. The customer responded that way. And the customer knows they're being recorded, right? It's not like it's not secretive.
Right.
And then we can share that with other folks and say, hey, we can celebrate it together. If it was a great moment, we can learn from it. And holy moly, is it hard to have camaraderie right now, or, hard to keep and develop camaraderie like we used to in the office. And camaraderie is a big part of what I think makes a team work, mutual trust and respect.
Absolutely.
It is much easier to relate to people when we're in the same room, feeling the same vibes, and so we're working harder than ever at Lessonly to figure out what are the digital ways we can drive camaraderie. And I'm not sure it's more complicated than going the extra mile to call somebody who you work with and just check in on them. I go on walks down the middle of the street where, my teammate and I, he's on one side of the street, I'm on the other, or, we do that every now and then just to be near one another.
Very good.
Yeah. And it's just like, how can we drive a little creativity to keep that camaraderie going and to help one another see what's working? Because that's also a big part of being in the office together, just seeing what's working and what's working and what's working.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I found myself uncomfortably adopting the behavior of actually, because we all have our screens where we're actually interacting with the person on the other side of the camera. I'm actually continually looking at the lens of the camera now, as opposed to the face on the screen, so I can actually give them eye contact, as opposed to looking down and actually looking at the individual that you're talking to, just trying to be able to connect a little bit more virtually,
Right. I know I'm looking at the camera right now and I want to be looking at you. So I keep doing this, it's
exactly.
It's different.
So have you seen, well, let me ask you this, and congrats on 1,000 customers. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, fun round number.
Absolutely. What are some of the challenges that you've seen with companies that weren't ready for adopting this new remote environment and this new, more importantly for you, this remote training?
Yeah, I would say it's less challenges and more upside because a company might have said, we have a 5-year strategy for being, ready to go remote. And then they had to make that a 5-minute strategy, to be hyperbolic. They really had to make it a 5-day strategy in truth of how are we going to make this change?
Right.
So I'm inspired by the changes to our legal system that could be very beneficial. Right now, folks who don't maybe live close to the courthouse, who have to go to the courthouse. What if they could zoom in and have the same experience, and we could do it with more expediency? We could create a more efficient system. We could create a more equitable system by tapping into some technologies we already have in our hands that these older systems just weren't ready for.
Right.
You think about the healthcare system, how much we invest in people going in to see their doctors.
Absolutely.
Telemedicine was certainly already there, and this is going to skyrocket telemedicine's potential. And that's just I'm looking for the bright lights of this, and there are many of them. And it's it's hard to say that without caveating it by being like, hey, I know that people are dying, and I know that people are hurt, and they're losing their jobs. I also know that it's really important to see what is accelerating that could be a force for a lot of positivity in the world.
Absolutely.
Because, I recently learned, Aaron, the definition of the word sacred is effectively it's a mixed bag. Anything that is sacred is both bringing some positives and some not so positives. And most of life is sacred, right? We change things and we get benefits and we get downsides. Think of all the technology, right? That we have great upsides and we know the downsides clearer than we ever have, right? And I think that's what COVID will end up being, is a sacred moment.
Absolutely. Well said. Well said. I mean, we've been forced into this maturation and forced into adopting and evolving technology. I mean, the remote workforce has hockey sticked and to the degree of permanent remote work consideration has also really opened up a lot more efficiency for companies. Have you seen any unforeseen successes with some of the new companies that you've taken on with the online and the remote type of training?
Great question. When it comes to the upside, I'll start there. Bigger deals than we've ever seen that are probably moving faster than they ever would have because there's high urgency. So while our pipeline has in some ways increased in big ways, that's very exciting. There's also the other side of it, which is some of the businesses who would have bought from Lessonly this year, they don't exist. And prior to COVID, they would have.
Wow.
So it's been very much again a mixed bag where we've had some companies accelerate their needs in a big way, and other companies who would have very well been customers for us this year, they don't exist as businesses anymore. And as a business owner, I know you will understand this, and I can tell you for sure that I understand the pain that must be felt in those situations.
Absolutely.
I've worked on Lessonly for 8 years. If it had vanished with the coronavirus, I don't know what I'd be doing right now. So my heart goes out to all the people who had that happen. And, I feel very inspired to push as hard as possible to make Lessonly work because, I just know that I can't take it for granted.
No, we can't. And we made mention of a stat through the news regarding 60%. There was a stat from, I think, the Wall Street Journal that 60% of businesses that got shut down that were restaurants are not going to be able to make it back after COVID. And that's just a terrible statistic. But we do have to look at these bright moments, obviously, as a counterbalance to what individuals are going through, what businesses are going through, and be able to take this opportunity to find the silver lining and find the gems in this space. Culture is also a very strong component of Lessonly. One of the strongest in our city, in Indianapolis, and it's not a virtual signal from Lessonly. It is is a core fundamental of what you focus on, and you focus on integrity, honesty, respect in the workplace, and these are things that are not just window painting on the side of Lessonly, but literally are foundational for what you do. So kudos for that, and I certainly you're more than welcome, want to explore that space. But culture and these type of aspects in the workplace that's now remote, like you talked about, how do you support that that fabric that you have sewn over years? Because it certainly can break whenever you're in the boxed frame that you're in, right?
Yeah, I'll tell you, Aaron, my short answer is I don't know yet. I don't know how to do this. I'm learning every day how to do it. Some of the things that used to work still work. Some of the investments we've made in our relational capital, we're drawing down on them right now,
right?
When things are tough. And that's why you want to have trust. That's why I want to have trust, right? Because when times get tough, that's when you need it. And this is one of those times. But the idea that, to say that I know how to navigate what's going on right now, I will tell you that there are some days where I feel like I'm earning my paycheck and doing my job well, and there are other days where I didn't click. Yeah. And an old lesson that I learned from my friend Mike Fitzgerald, who also helped me start Lessonly, co-founder of Lessonly, he likes to talk about doubling down when the wind's at your back, and I think that's a really important thing right now, which is it could be a natural inclination to have a good day and go, hey, I'm going to celebrate this good day and kind of hang it up. Be like, that was, but I don't have as many good days as I used to. So when I have a good day now, Mike's thoughts come to mind, and doubling down on those days and pushing a little bit harder, making that one extra phone call, doing that one extra thing when the wind's still at my back, can be a huge win. And the next day when the wind isn't at my back, Mike would argue that's the time to take a break, which is also counterintuitive, because when the day is not working in my favor, what I want to do is push a little harder. And Mike would say, that's the time to go take a walk. That's the time to go take a nap. That's the time to say, I'm going to come back at this hard tomorrow, and then actually do that. So, the beautiful thing about the coronavirus for me is understanding that a lot of my strength was built around the world just working. And when the world stopped working, my strength and the integrity of my strength came into question. And that's been good for me to look in the eye, because, if my strength is only built off of kind of just everything humming, I don't know if that's real strength. So now is the time for me to go, okay, my distractions are gone.
Yep.
The motion of the world is different. How am I going to learn through this? And I have a choice of how I come out of it. And, some days I think I'm doing a good job, and other days I'm like, well, crud. Mm-hmm. But in those days when I say, well, crud, it's not carrying them with me. And the next day showing up, and if the wind's at my back, doubling down. And if the next day it isn't,
right.
Giving myself the grace to get that wind back.
There we go. So instead of being contextually kind of reinforced by a commonplace work environment, or the pressures of a startup, or just the 3-year, 8-year type of build of a company, and there's always pressures there, that's still contextually bound to normalcy. This is not normal, and then you actually start seeing what you're made of, right?
Right. Yeah, it's a big deal. It's a big deal.
It is a big deal. Go ahead.
So I don't know how to do it yet, but I'm learning.
Well, that's an honest answer, and we appreciate that. The again, focused on culture and support of peers. I mean, there's also something that has to be said about remote work always had its reservations. Companies had the reservations fully adopting the remote model. And there's obvious reasons why. And there's a lot of I don't say old, stubborn companies that resist this. But at the same time, just recognizing that you have another challenge with your personnel that are stuck behind their screens, that don't have that social affirmation, they don't have that human body reinforcement of a concept or a thought. There's no longer these conversations in boardrooms. You got to give some additional pats on the back. You have to give some additional affirmation. Mm-hmm. From the remote side of things, to giving people breaks, not having them indelibly tied to their keyboard. I mean, there's a whole other realm here that we haven't experienced of how do you support from afar, right?
Right. Oh yeah. And one thing that I try to model at work is just that I'm committed to modeling at work is just moving more. So I'm not tied down in a meeting room anymore, so I can be on the phone, and not every call requires video. And so if it doesn't require video, I do a walk and talk.
Yep.
And I walk with my teammates and talk. And I find that my brain works better when I do that. And I have been averaging 7 miles a day for the past 3 months. I lost nearly 10 pounds just by walking while I talk. I was going to talk anyway, right? And now I get to walk while I do it. And that's a silver lining. That's a big silver lining.
I don't know. I think I might have. I need to lose some pounds here, Max. So I might actually take on the Max Yoder walk and talk diet.
I'm worried about how many pounds you might lose, Aaron, if you walk and talk.
I love it, man. I love it. I won't go back. I'm going to keep that with me. Post COVID.
Absolutely. So you're channeling your energy. I literally, with my loquaciousness, I bet I could actually do 5 miles around the bloody building here.
Yeah.
Dangerous.
There's the purple word for the day. Did you think?
Loquacious, yes.
Yeah. Did you think you'd be hearing loquaciousness today?
No.
All right.
So me neither. Me neither. But I'd say that's a beautiful thing of kind of building our mental health, right? Our mental health is tied directly to our physical health. They're the one and the same. They're really not different healths, right? We stay healthy as one unit. And that means our bodies and our minds cooperate, and they're interconnected. So when I move, my brain is improved. When I take naps, my brain is improved. And I've always modeled taking naps. I'm big on that.
Right.
And we spend a lot of days in fifth gear. I like to think about third gear as like a 5 gears on an automobile.
Right.
Where third gear is where we want to spend most of our time when we're working. Mm-hmm. It's a smooth, steady pace. Every now and then we have to shift up to 4th or 5th gear when there's an emergency or something needs a quick, rapid change. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be times when we need to slow down into 1st or 2nd gear when we're off sync and we need to communicate. But we should by and large be in 3rd gear. Well, I think we spent a lot of time adjusting to the COVID world in 4th and 5th gear. Right. So I'm not surprised if people need more 4-day work weeks right now.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised if people need 6-hour days or 5-hour days instead of 8-hour days, and giving ourselves the grace to say, hey, guess what? The old world isn't here anymore. So we can't just apply all of the old rules of the old world to the new world. We got to adjust them.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good series of kind of insights regarding a response to the remote environment. We also, I mean, I'm no scientist, obviously, but I mean, we are affected by the in-person affirmation. We get dopamine injections whenever we actually see a response to a good idea or a response to a bad idea. These things don't translate on video. So we do need to take a moment and be able, you can also just imagine with the sedentary scenario that more and more people are forced into by working at their computer as opposed to walking around the office, right? We have some other issues that we're going to have to contend with down the road, right?
Yeah, I just hope people take the time to walk if they can. I know not everybody's as lucky as me to be able to walk and talk. Some people do need a spreadsheet up.
Yep.
But I hope the times when they don't need a spreadsheet, they're moving. My mother-in-law says, "Don't steal my steps," and what she means by that is, you can architect your life so that your steps, you steal them from yourself. And an example of that would be if your refrigerator is on your main floor and you also have an attic. So we have an attic, and that means I have 2 flights of stairs to go up. But if I want to go to the fridge, I got to walk down those steps. So she would say, hey, don't put a fridge, like a mini fridge in the attic, because you'll steal your steps.
There you go.
If you architect your life so that you have to take more steps, you will take more steps. And often exercise is just nothing more complicated. And she's a doctor of exercise science. So
cool.
The woman knows her stuff. And she's like, exercise doesn't have to be you lifting a weight. It literally could just be you walking every day, and sometimes put a backpack on, add some weight to your walk, and boom. But oftentimes, the domain of exercise seems like it requires stuff that it doesn't. And her point is, 80% of the world hasn't signed up for a gym membership and probably never will. So how do we get them moving? Well, let's just walk more. So I'm a big proponent of that, which is why I'm talking about it. And it's working in my life.
Very good. We're going to have a walking remote edge of the web from here on out. That's what we're going to have to do.
Some things won't work as well doing it, Aaron. Some things.
I don't know. We could try. Hey, this is we do want to talk about additional spaces in the workplace when it comes down to support and affirmation. And again, you guys operate on a very strong series of principles here. But I wanted to kind of pivot around and move away from the remote aspect of things and talk to you about what are your thoughts about this cancel culture that we are in now, and how to respect individuals in the workplace, and how to support that respect. From an employer's standpoint, there's an awful lot of things that are happening, and social media is now training people to be directly opinionated and offended if something doesn't align with their perspective. And we're in a very tenuous moment here. How does a company actually even that out and support people's opinions, while companies themselves are also challenged to take a position culturally,
Yeah. Oh yeah. One of my favorite people, Jimmy Miller, met him. He became a customer of Lesson through his company, and now he's just we're good friends. And Jimmy shared with me Martin Luther's kind of ultimate virtues, no, it was not Martin Luther. I got Thomas Aquinas. Excuse me.
Oh, wow.
I have not read Thomas Aquinas. He says it's a tough read, but he kind of gave me the synopsis, which is Thomas Aquinas basically argues the ultimate virtue is to be charitable, and then and charitability as where everything starts. And then there's grace as the next thing. So the two things that the Jimmy taught me via Thomas Aquinas is charity and then grace. Charity is, the idea of, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to take a charitable reading on what you just said.
Right.
I'm not going to cancel you. I'm going to recognize that you're a human. And guess what humans do? They do some things above average. They do other things averagely, and they do some things below averagely, right?
Yep.
And average is often in a social world a matter of opinion. And so if we're gracious and if we are charitable with people, with what they say, we give them the benefit of the doubt in their interpretations, just like we'd want other people to do to us. Mm-hmm. And then if we find out that maybe they meant to be harmful in what they said, or they meant to be hurtful in what they said, well, then we give them grace. Or maybe we find out that, hey, I give a charitable reading to a teammate that they're trying their best. And then I find out that they didn't put in the time that they said they were going to put in.
Right.
So now I have to give them grace. Right. At first, I give them the benefit of the doubt that they are putting in the time. And then when I find out that maybe they aren't, I need to give them grace, because if we don't give people grace, they'll never tell you about a mistake ever again.
There you go.
You have to have a second chance. One of my favorite songwriters, Gregory Alan Isakov, says, if it worked for second chances, we'd all be alone. And I think it's very important to keep that in mind, right? Everybody needs second chances and third chances.
Yep.
And grace is what that is finding out that when somebody did fall short, you're still a friend to them. Because guess what happens in that situation? People feel a lot more comfortable raising their hand and saying, I made a mistake. And when we can bring our mistakes out in the open, we are going to be a real team. When we have to hide our mistakes for fear of being canceled, we have no chance of being a real team. We have no chance of having a real relationship. So if people want to have real relationships and be on teams that are actually teams, we have to be charitable and we have to be gracious. And there isn't, and what I see in cancel culture is anger and sadness and a fear of being judged, right?
Right.
Everybody's angry and everybody's sad about something. It is a part of the human condition. And processing that anger and that sadness is not something we're taught to do. Right. We're taught to keep it in.
And avoid it.
Avoid it. Yeah. Be a man, Aaron, right?
Right.
It's some cultural BS. We need to deal with our anger. We need to deal with our sadness. We need to process it. We need to heal. In the absence of processing and healing, we are going to feel very insecure. We're going to feel upset. And we're going to feel angry and sad. And we're going to take the anger and sadness out on other people, because that is cognitively the safer thing to do. Some people will take their anger and sadness out on themselves. A lot of times we will push our anger and sadness so far down that we don't realize we start taking it out on other people. And they become the thing we think we're angry and sad at, when really the anger and sadness emanates from us. So my point of all this is to say, I'm not surprised that there's a lot of finger pointing and a lot of villainizing, because there's so much anger and sadness that people do not know how to deal with. And it's not easy to deal with anger and sadness. It's not me judging them. I'm saying we don't have a lot of tools, man. We just don't have a lot of tools. We're not taught, and there's not a lot of models for dealing with anger and sadness.
Right.
So I guess what I'm getting at is we're going to have cancel culture so long as we don't deal with our own internal anger and sadness. As soon as we start dealing with our internal anger and sadness, we'll start to see that why would we ever want to cancel anybody? Because we ourselves would never want to be canceled. Right. We want people to be compassionate to us. Not much more difficult than that, right? We want people to be compassionate to us, so we should be compassionate to them. And if somebody makes what we deem a mistake, they're a human. I'm not surprised, right? And if you give somebody a chance to try again, they may or may not. If they become somebody who continually makes the same mistake, you might have to part ways with them, right? You might have to not socialize with them. But if you're not giving somebody a second chance, I don't see a whole lot of room for relationships in your life.
No, you're absolutely right. And again, this remote work environment has certainly distanced people, and on top of that, the lack of filter in social media, because you can say basically anything online and get away with it, is all feeding the flame of this cancel culture. But let me ask you this. We're about to come into, or already actually in this political season, we're about to come into a huge election. And never in my life have I ever seen such venom between two parties. And this cancel culture is right there in the middle of it, right? So in the workplace, where everybody cohabitates as they're working towards a common mission, right? There's still such a political upheaval that can permeate, can get into the workplace. How does an employer set their mission of grace and compassion and try to instill that with the colleagues that they work with? How do they make sure that they have that as a safe place? I hate to even say that word.
I know what you mean.
But it's there's, if you were to give some advice to employers that are struggling with this and kind of looking at what's about to come here in the next few months, what kind of a guide would you give? What type of advice would you give as you presented the forgiveness concept?
Yeah. So charity and grace, first we start with education, right? And
Yep.
compassion. We start with education. Here's what they mean. But those are just words. And the next thing we have to do is live them.
Mm-hmm.
And if the executive team at Lesson Lee doesn't show one another charity and grace, if I don't show charity and grace to my direct reports, they will not show charity and grace to their direct reports.
Right.
Or maybe on the off chance they will buck the trend, right? But I should not expect them to, I guess is a better way of saying it, if I'm not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So first we zoom in on ourselves is the only thing we can do. And we say, if I want to see more charity and grace in the world, do I bring charity and grace to the world? Because I can't control what anybody else does. I can only control what I do. So the good news for me is I get to set a tone. So I need to treat my colleagues with charity and grace. And that means that they will feel a requirement of doing the same with their teammates.
Mm-hmm.
But if I don't to them, I should have no expectation of them doing it with their teammates. And if we find out that somebody is not, leading with charity and grace, well, we have a one-on-one conversation with that individual,
There you
right?
go.
We don't shame them.
Right.
Shame, fear, guilt are poison. If we scare people, if we shame them, if we make them feel guilty, it's poisonous. It'll decrease our communication very, very quickly. They're already feeling enough shame, fear, and guilt without me saying a word.
Right.
Everybody's carrying enough fear, shame, and guilt to last them a lifetime. Adding to it is not a goal. So we need to bring them one-on-one and communicate and talk about what we saw, talk about what we would have liked to see and why we would have liked to see it. And just ask the person how they're doing. Because a lot of times when somebody acts out, it's again, they're sad, they're angry, they're lonely, and they just want to be heard. I mean, think about all the vitriol you see. How many of those folks do you think are not sad and are not angry and do not feel lonely?
Right.
I'd say quite a few. So it's our job to try to not build more, guilt, fear, and shame, because those things will drive anger. They will drive sadness and they will drive loneliness.
You tapped into it there, lead by example, right?
You got it. That's it.
And employers and managers have to have that as a it's not just a tactic. They have to lead and they have to adopt that very important behavior. And again, we have the additional exacerbating factor of everybody being remote. You have to have that preeminent as you discuss things, as you interact with colleagues and the like. You have to have that embraced and demonstrate that regularly. And you actually use that as a foundational principle of Lesson Lee.
Right.
That's right there on your company's pages. You lead by example. You apply that in your hiring process, in your management process. So, I mean, again, it's very important to have. I just want to make sure that we establish some good tactics of behavior for employers. And you actually have a book out. We talked to you about it last year. Do Work Better, right?
You better work.
Do better work. I'm sorry. Oh, gosh.
Oh, all good, man. Hey, we've been talking for a while. You're good, brother.
Do better work. How's and you actually accomplish a lot of this type of advice with that book. So we certainly recommend employers pick that up. And how the book do?
Yeah, third printing. So that's
wow.
good news.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So I thought when we printed the first printing, I was like, oh man, that's a lot of books. And then we got through the first printing, second printing, and now we're on the third printing. It's exceeded my expectations.
Very good.
And one of the, there's some anecdotes that I find to be fun. And one of them is I've now been able to go to 3 different Air Force bases and share the book's lessons. And what that stimulates in me is that the military is interested in a more compassionate approach to leadership and accountability, which, frankly, I did not think I was going to be going to military bases to talk about the principles of the book. But one person heard me talking on a podcast and he sent it to the colonel of the military base and said, I think we should invite this person in to talk. And that just changed my life. So now I know a lot more people in the military. And that's just been really fun. But what I think it gets down to is when people hear things like compassion, charity, and grace in the workplace, they immediately might think that accountability will be a problem. But I think I do not see these things as antithetical to accountability.
Right.
I see them as drivers of accountability. In a loving relationship, my accountability goes way up than in a non-loving or fear-based relationship, right? So if I'm in a fear-based relationship, I will bring pseudo accountability, something that looks like accountability when you're watching me, but actually isn't. If I feel like I'm under somebody's thumb, I'm going to probably have some pseudo accountability. But if I actually feel trusted and loved by somebody, that is where I will drive across the country for you. And if that isn't accountability, I don't know what is.
Very good.
And so let's say I have a teammate who we are working together. We're getting agreements, which is a chapter in the book, instead of having unspoken expectations. And repeatedly, that individual is not living into the agreements that we worked out together. I have to let them go. I have to maintain accountability, right? Because that individual is not bringing the accountability that I need. That is still compassionate to me, and it's not only compassionate to that individual, because they're probably in a job they shouldn't be doing anyway if they can't measure up to their own agreements.
Certainly.
But it's also compassionate to the rest of the team who is living into their agreements. You may have a family dynamic where where there's that one uncle who doesn't really bring anything to the Thanksgiving dinner, right? Yep. That uncle still comes because it's a family. But work is not family. We are a team, and if somebody is not is not being accountable, they can't stay on the team.
Right.
But we have to communicate through that as opposed to blindsiding. So we can be compassionate and drive accountability. And you brought up the book, and I mentioned the Air Force stuff because I think I'm really proud of it. I think it's really cool. But also to see the Air Force say compassionate accountability is the thing we care about, I'm like, hell yeah.
There we go. And completely unforeseen. So, I mean, that's also, avoiding stereotypes and the like. This, everybody wants to be able to be trusted, valued, and respected, right?
You bet.
Regardless of what organization you're part of. So these are, again, fundamentals, and kudos for the third printing. That's fantastic. We certainly recommend that. It's a solid, good read. It's an easy read as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep, absolutely. So we've been talking about culture. We've been talking about the remote challenges, and certainly Lessonly is a core component for training sales staff that are selling remotely, selling digitally now, and we've covered a lot here.
We did.
I wanted to swing back around and give you the floor here. What bugs you in your industry right now?
Yeah, I mean, machismo is a big bother for me. Machismo in general of kind of having to. Well, I guess let me change gears, because I think machismo is kind of a sub thing. Perfectionism bothers me. Perfectionism bothers me a lot. Perfectionism for me is, in my opinion, is highly corrosive and self-limiting, and I don't think that is clear in the world. I think perfectionism actually is something people put on their resumes still, as though I'm a perfectionist is a good thing. Perfectionism is, I think, rooted in how do we think about the God and the devil? Well, God is perfect and the devil is all the bad stuff. So we don't want to be the bad stuff, right? So we want to be the good stuff. But that's not how anybody is. Everybody is a mixed bag.
Right.
We got, we have the God and the devil in us both. And I'm not coming at that from a religious standpoint. I'm just coming at that from examples of, pros and cons, good and bad, spirituality, right? We all have redeeming qualities, and we have some qualities that we find less redeeming. If we are perfectionists, we can't acknowledge that. We have to act like those parts of us don't exist, or we have to hide them and be ashamed of them. So I am a big fan of wholeness, WHOLENESS,
there you go.
which is the antidote to perfectionism. Wholeness is acknowledging that I'm a whole person who has above average qualities, below average qualities. And that's normal. If we want humans to not be human, then perfectionism works. But if humans, if we don't allow people to be people, I guess perfectionism is the way to go. But I want people to be people, and people make mistakes. People have gaps. And I don't think filling all of those gaps is what makes somebody worthwhile. I think acknowledging where they are and accepting who they are is how people grow. So I think perfectionism is corrosive because it creates judgment. It creates judgment of self and judgment of others. And I don't see judgment as a key to the growth of our culture or ourselves. What I think is a growth to a culture and ourselves is how, if we observe ourselves, if we watch what we do, and then we see how we feel after we do it, or a day after we do it, or a week after we do it, watching ourselves. There's a phrase called being your own witness, which is one way of thinking about watching yourself. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And imagine you watching yourself each day and asking the question of, why do I do that? And if you can face the answers to those questions, you will very quickly find opportunities to be a healthier person. I know I do. Why do I do that? Oh, well, I might just be escaping. It might be because I don't want to look something in the eye. Well, what do I want to look in the eye?
Right.
Well, there's a few things I don't want to look in the eye, and then I look them in the eye and I start to grow. Acceptance of what is happening is a big part of being a whole person. And we can accept what is happening only as we become a witness to ourselves. So that it bothers me that perfectionism is still something that people think is worth doing.
Right.
And I'd like there to be more wholeness and more acceptance of self so we can grow.
There you go. There you go. And that really is part of the perspective of this cancel culture. There's no forgiveness in this.
Right.
And we certainly have to grow as a society to be able to appreciate perspectives and also be able to have grace and forgiveness. So we certainly want to promote your book, dobetterwork.com, and certainly want to recommend our listeners give that a look, because a lot of these fundamentals are right there in the book, and we certainly recommend that read. Anything else that we can promote for you today, Max?
You've done it, man. I'm grateful to be on the show for a third time, Aaron. Thank you for having me. Jacob, thank you for having me. And I hope you had as much fun as I did.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure. And literally, these conversations can go on for hours. I do appreciate our engagement and how we can actually go after things, because like I said last time, every time we start talking, there's new nodes of new conversation that just kind of pop up there. And boy, I wish we had an open forum where we could just plow through a lot of that. But that said, you know what? I'm certainly going to tag you and have some of these conversations in the future outside of the show, because you are certainly a mentor in so many ways to your team, as well as a lot of people that listen to this show, as well as just watching what you're doing. So congratulations on all of that.
Thank you, Aaron. I love being here, man. I love spending time with you.
You're more than welcome. All right. So be sure to check out the trending news that we've covered with Max Yoder on the bonus episode. We're actually going to roll out the bonus YouTube episode probably pretty soon in the next day or so. So check that out. If you want to follow Max, go follow him on Twitter at Max Yoder, Instagram Max Yoder, and LinkedIn Max Yoder. He's got all the Yoders, so he's dialed in from a brand standpoint. So don't forget to like and subscribe to Edge of the Web Radio on YouTube. And make sure, hey, if you're really feeling up to it, we'd love to have a review on our iTunes channel. That's how we can optimize our own content, but also listen to you and get some feedback from you as an audience member. So certainly appreciate if you give us a review there. Check out all the must-see videos over at edgeofthewebradio.com, as well as the articles and content that we curate from this show. edgeofthewebradio.com. For all of us over at Edge, be safe, be well, and do not be a piece of cyber driftwood. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.